let's transition back over to football. We got our weekend picks for college football and NFL week number 9 and week 8. Seems like we're moving pretty fast through the season already, but we got LSU and Texas A&M. Another huge SEC matchup this Saturday night. Number 8 LSU and number 14 A&M. We're both going to pick the upset in this one. We're both picking Texas A&M. I mean, both teams have had a really good season so far. Lost the first game. LSU lost to USC that first game. We've seen what USC's done since then. And A&M, they lost to Notre Dame, basically having no offense in that one. And neither team has looked back. 6 straight wins for both of them. Honestly, like the smart pick, we're kind of just talking about this. Smart pick might be LSU, but it seems like a lot of people are going with A&M. And I'm going to go with A&M too, man. Like, I'm not going to get too high off of that Missouri game from what I saw. Because Missouri is still a good team, but clearly they weren't that good. But for me, I think LSU, like, even with both teams being on a 6-game win streak, I feel like the time is right for A&M to get a huge win. So, and it's at home for them. So I think that's going to be a huge advantage there. But I definitely think this one will be a lot closer than people might think.
Yeah, I think this one for me is like this is really tough to pick from. Both these two teams have been on a roll, right? I don't even really think about their first week losses anymore. Like those are pretty much things of the past entirely.
Right.
I think the issues here for me for LSU are just like they've struggled a little more recently. Like Arkansas was not a problem, but they 29-26 overtime victory against Ole Miss stands out amidst their recent games. In similar ways to Texas A&M barely beating Arkansas and barely beating BGSU, but then they turn around and beat Missouri 41-10. Allow 24 for Mississippi State, put up 34. I think the big thing for me is that they've found their offense. And LSU, while they look good, I think are still kind of looking for that identity consistently. I mean, they've got a good offense. They've got a pretty solid defense until some weeks when they don't, right? South Carolina puts the test on them. Ole Miss puts the test on them. So I think there's room for either team to win this one. And I do think that, as we just said before recording, that LSU does feel like the smarter pick here. But I think that with both of them being on this streak, with the way that A&M played against Missouri, the resolve to come into that game, be at the bottom of the rankings, and play a team in the top 10 and just tear them apart. I think that that's going to be a big thing. You're getting it at 7:30 p.m. in College Station. Really, really going to be, I think, a positive environment for the Aggies. But I don't think they're going to get another 41-10 victory. I could see this one
Yeah.
being a 34 24 to copy their last score, but I really think it could be more like a 34-31, somewhere around there. I would not be surprised for this game to end in a walk-off field goal. So it's going to be a good game, going to be a good football team. I think I talked about my own dad, liking the Pelicans in our previous video. My dad is an LSU fan, big Louisiana guy, so he's not going to be happy with this pick, but I do think that the Aggies will take this one. Moving over, jumping into the NFL, we have two teams that I think have had kind of weird seasons. And I think maybe that's a pretty not super hot take. The Eagles and the Bengals are going to be playing each other at 1 p.m. I think this one actually should be a really good game, much like most of the Bengals games, and much like most of the Bengals games so far this season. Terrence and I are going to be picking against them. We're going to take the Eagles. It's nothing wrong with the Bengals offense. All right, they've proved that every single week, except for maybe when they struggled against the Patriots and Giants. They're on a 2-game win streak too, which is impressive. So are the Eagles. The Eagles were 2-2, now they're 4-2. Bengals were 1-4, now they're 3-4. Really trying to put that me saying that when you start 1-4, it's over to rest. Unfortunately, I think they're about to go to 3-5. The Eagles are just a little more consistent. Right? I think the Browns game stands out. That defense stifled them. The Tampa Bay game is definitely a tough one. When the Bucs get hot, especially when they had a healthy receiving core, that is as massive. The Saints, I think the Eagles started their downfall. So that game is what it is. I think these two teams are equally weird this year, and but you've got AJ Brown back. Saquon had a monster game against the Giants. Jalen Hurts is starting to look good. I look a little less like his brain is full of turnovers. And the Bengals defense is still just not good enough for me to be able to trust them, right? Like, do I trust Joe Burrow? Yes. Do I trust Jamar Chase? Yes. Do I trust Chase Brown and Zach Moss? Yeah, sure. Do I trust the Bengals defense to stop Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith? No. And I think that's just where it comes down to. if we could get another Washington game maybe where it's a big shootout. But personally, with the way that the Bengals and Eagles have been playing recently, I would take this one with a pretty typical all touchdown 28-21. Bengals just come up a little short in this one. I think the Eagles take this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. Funnily enough, these teams have played the exact same teams in the last two. So the last game for the Giants, for the Eagles, was against the Giants, a 28-3 win. Week before that, they played Cleveland, 20-16 win. Reverse for the Bengals, Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago against the Giants, 17-7. Last week against the Browns, 21-14. For me, it's kind of the same thing. And even with, the offense obviously being the much stronger part of that Browns or Bengals team, the Bengals offense, like, not super impressive the last couple weeks. I mean, you had that great game against Baltimore, and obviously Cleveland's defense and the Giants' defense are better than Baltimore's secondary right now. I mean, that's clear. Um, but heck, the Eagles just dropped 28 and on the Giants. I'm screwing this all the way up, but yeah, like I don't think they're clicking in a way they should be just yet. Um, those first few games, obviously, it was all offense, but last couple of games they haven't really shown that. And like you mentioned, the Eagles, that game against the Browns, that defense for the Browns kind of stifled them. I mean, that's been their strong point because they've been devoid of offense the entire season. But against the Giants, they started to finally show, like, hey, this is the Eagles that we've been expecting like all season. They really haven't had that one statement win since week one against the Packers. So I think last week definitely was a statement win. I mean, the Giants are still bad, but their defense isn't a joke either, especially up front with Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he's a monster out there. So for me, I think it's just the Eagles, like you said, are a little bit more consistent. I just don't have too much trust in the Bengals just yet overall, but clearly they're starting to turn things around from that early horrible start. Moving to the Colts and the Texans, this is kind of an interesting one. So Colts right now 4-3, just behind the Texans in the AFC South. Obviously, Titans and Jacksonville are kind of mostly dead in the water here. So Texans are coming off of a interesting loss against the Packers. That was a close one, obviously, but when you look at the stat sheet for CJ Stroud, this is why you really want to be able to watch games because not too good out there. We both do think that he'll shake that off in this next game against the Colts. We're both picking the Texans. I mean, clearly the Texans are just a better team. And right now, I just like Anthony Richardson. Just because, we're almost halfway through his second season, I think people kind of forget the man's only played like 10 games in the NFL still. I mean, he's been injured so much. So I still think, they might have been better off keeping Joe Flacco in for a little bit, but I understand you did draft him that high. You want to keep Anthony Richardson in there, but right now, I just don't see what happened in week one between these teams, with that great game from both of them, 29-27. I don't see that happening this time around. I think Texans come out, get a pretty easy, decisive victory.
Yeah, I think this one was when I opened up the sheet to figure out who I was picking today, I think that this was the easiest choice. The Colts aren't a bad team, but if you look at their last three, even their every game they played compared to what the Texans have done, and I have restraints and complaints with the Texans as well, right? Especially as this is a funny perspective, I guess, to add. And I talked about this in our last NFL video, but I have CJ Stroud as one of my fantasy quarterbacks. Uh, not the shining star of my team by any means, by fantasy standards. But the Colts, they win 16-10 against a Miami team without Tua, a team that other teams have made decent work against. Like the Miami defense is pretty locked in. I think they know what they've got to be doing. But for a second there, it looked like they might be the only team to lose to the Dolphins while the Dolphins were lacking Tua. He'll be back against the Cardinals this week. That'll be maybe talked about, maybe not. We'll see what happens. But then they struggle with the Titans, who are 1-5. They barely beat them 2017. They lost to Jacksonville, 37-34. They barely beat the Steelers, that was impressive. I'll give them that. And the win over the Colts, or the win over the Bears. Sorry, I don't think the Bears have really found their identity yet. Well, the Texans, on the other hand, put up 41 on New England on a New England team whose strength is its defense. Right, like I expected that one to be a good Texans win. Did I expect them to drop 40 on them? No. They beat the Bills 23-20. They beat the Jaguars, and that was at a point where I think we kind of thought the Jaguars were dead, but maybe there's some life. They did get crushed by the Vikings, and they did lose, a shootout with the Packers. But overall, like the Texans defense is still better than the Colts defense, and the Texans offense is still much better, I think, than this Colts offense. And Anthony Richardson is not entirely there yet, and I would maybe trust Flacco in this one a little more. So I don't, and it's no hate to the Colts, but I think their receiving core is a little tough, right? Like obviously the Texans have gone down a little bit since Nico Collins dropped, but Alec Pierce is your leading guy is just really not moving me that much, and there's no hate to Alec Pierce. He can, I'm hoping that he'll continue to blossom and become a better NFL player. Not that he's bad, um, representative of the AFC South, and I do think that the Texans are going to come in. I don't expect this to be a 41-21 kind of win, but I do think that the Texans could probably come in and drop 30, maybe allow 17, 18, and call it a day and move on with their division. Going from there, we have a sad one. We have an unfortunate one. We have a game that should be the game. We have the Bears versus Commanders, and if you were to ask me, 2 weeks ago, if this game was to happen 2 weeks ago, I would pick the Commanders. Right now, however, we are both picking the Bears. For me, it comes down to injuries, right? Even if he does play, I don't trust that Jaden Daniels is fully there, right? He went out pretty early with that rib injury, did not come back in at all. He did not practice today. And Marcus Mariota played a great football game against the Panthers. Um, the Bears defense is certainly much better than the Panthers defense. There's no way around that by any means. So Marcus Mariota playing against this defense, I'm not as trusting of as aside from him coming in to fill in against the Panthers defense. I think the Bears offense has found its footing. Right, they put up 35 against the Jaguars, 36 against the Panthers, 24 against the Rams. The tough thing here is that those teams don't stand out as being defensive standouts. The Commanders defense just held the Panthers to 7 points, but the Bears defense also held the Panthers to 10 points, right? So this is going to be an interesting one. I think if Jaden Daniels was here, if this offense was fully ready to go, I would trust that high-flying offense would come in and take it, and the Commanders would advance to 6-2 and look really good in that division. Unfortunately, without a healthy Jaden Daniels, I think that the Bears are going to come in and probably steal one, right? I think this could easily be like a 3-point victory for sure. Bears defense is just good. It might be a little tough because they are 0-2 away, and they are going to the Commander Stadium. That could be, a hard one for them. I think that all things considered, the Commanders with a healthy Jaden Daniels should win this game. Nothing against the Bears in that one, but that offense has been great. Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels. Those are their three leaders in your core stats. But even the other players in that team have been good. That defense has found its footing. But the Bears also look good, and if they're going up against a Commanders team with a little bit of a weak point at their lead position, I think that's probably going to be a kind of a nod to the Bears here. They'll come out of this 5-2. Commanders fall to 5-3. A little bit scary for the divisional standings, but if Jaden can get back, I think they can hold on to get a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it comes down to for me. Like you mentioned, I mean both these teams have played the Panthers in the past couple of weeks. Both pretty much destroyed Carolina. The Commanders did a little bit better, just slightly. Like you said, not much of a point differential there. But yeah, I don't think it'll be a complete fall off with Marcus Mariota out there because we just saw it last week. I mean, he played perfectly
Yeah.
fine against Carolina. But that is the Carolina defense, which is pretty atrocious to say the least. Because even in some of the games where the Panthers at least had some semblance of an offense, defense still wasn't there. So I'm not going to take too much from that. And in a game like this, you're definitely going to need Jaden Daniels out there. And like you said, he's questionable right now. And if he does play, like how much will that injury really affect him? I just don't know if it'll be enough to beat a Bears defense that's, unequivocally a top 5 defense in most categories, right? So, yeah, to me, it just comes down to that Bears defense doing what it has to do. And that offense, like you said, the last couple weeks, finally starting to get its footing. Because, remember, we talked about the Texans just now. the game against the Texans on Sunday Night Football wasn't too pretty. So even the Colts game, that one, even maybe the Rams game, right? But now the past couple weeks in London against the Panthers, like they've been pretty good. I expect that to continue. I think the Commanders do well, but Bears defense will make the difference. In this game, look, this will probably be the only time in the next 5 years that we pick the 49ers to lose to the Cowboys, but we're going to do it. Right now, the 49ers, I think they played around the same time last year. 49ers, Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, early October, I think. They've just got so much going on the injury report. I just can't pick them in good faith. And I know the Cowboys still have a lot of issues too. Deron Bland, he's still on IR. Eric Kendricks is questionable. Micah's questionable. Jordan Phillips is on IR. Like, I get it. The Niners just don't have anything on offense right now. I mean, Jordan Mason's questionable. Jawan Jennings is questionable. Debo, questionable. Jordan Kittle, questionable. Obviously, McCaffrey's out. Like, Brandon Ayuk's out. Like, what do they have? Like, they just don't have anything on offense. I mean, their best receiver, who, look, Ricky, all respect in the world to him to be able to come back after being literally being shot like 2 months ago. Respect in the world, all the respect in the world for him. But, like, that's their top receiver right now, presumably. Like, that's just not going to be good enough. Even against the Cowboys defense that has been an all-time embarrassment, you're hoping, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're expecting for the Cowboys, like, you come out of that bye week, everybody's talking trash about you still. You obviously, the 49ers are your boogeyman. You just got beat up by the Lions a couple weeks ago. Like, you got to come out strong in this one against this team that it just doesn't have too much left. So that is the one and only time I will pick the Cowboys against the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm going to start the segment in a similar fashion. I'm going to say that I really respect the amount of hater you have to be these ESPN bettors that have the Niners slated to win by 67% with no team. And now I will transition you to your daily news. I will go through the injury report as you just did. Essentially, October has been not kind to the Niners. Right, October 7th, you lose Yader Gross Matos, then you lose Talanoa Hufanga on the 9th. Your place kicker is gone. One of your place kickers is gone on October 19th. Christian McCaffrey's update, as these are now relevant to the Cowboys game. He's out, not going to play. Jake Moody is out. Dre Greenlaw out. Brandon Ayuk gone. Injured reserve, probably not going to see him to the playoffs if that. Jordan Mason limited at practice. He's questionable. Jawan Jennings did not practice. He's questionable. Kevin Giddens and George Odom just questionable. Not even nothing else on the sheet. Chris Conley, one of their backup receivers to try to come in, also questionable. Nick Bosa is questionable. And then as of today, George Kittle returned to practice but was questionable. Debo Samuel was there for a little bit, also questionable. Not that the Cowboys don't have their own injuries, and not that they're not susceptible to the run, but who's going to run? Me? There's no one out there on that team. Like, they don't. There's not a whole lot left on that that offense aside from Brock Purdy. This is just really unfortunate. This would be a big rivalry game. Yeah, if they were fully healthy, I would hope it'd be a shootout. I would pick the Niners for sure, but I would hope that we would get a good game out of it. Unfortunately, I think this Cowboys game that's kind of floundered around a little bit and just got beat to death by the Detroit Lions is going to get to turn around and get a big pick-me-up win, despite who it's against. Who's not on the field. I think this rivalry carries so much that Cowboys fans and Cowboys players really could take this win and get a big morale boost out of it. They need it for the division, right? The division is pretty competitive, and I don't even mean that in like the top three. They're only a game ahead of New York, so they could easily, and a mistake, or I guess they're like a game and a half, easily with a mistake or so, be right down there at the bottom. So this is a big one. I think that because of the injuries, the Cowboys will come out and get a victory. I don't think they'll beat them by like 40. I think they should, because there's no offense for the Niners right now. But I do think the Cowboys will find some way to struggle and make this a 20 to 12, 20 to 14 kind of victory. So yeah, I'm going with the Cowboys in the future when we pick this game again, because sometimes it's always going to happen. I will not be picking the Cowboys if I can help it. But yeah, I have to agree with your sentiment on the surprisingness of who we're picking. But it's just you got to feel for 49ers fans. There's many things they've gone through the past few years with, getting to the Super Bowl and not being able to overcome Patrick Mahomes and things like that. And then you get to this year and you think, all right, let's put it together. You lose Christian immediately. You get Jordan Mason. It looks like it could be good. And then you start bad anyway. And as you start to finally pick it up again, every single player in your locker room is dead. So a little tough. I think the Cowboys will take this one. Going to be an interesting primetime game with the Cowboys against half of the 49ers, but I do think the Cowboys will take this victory.